I spent 2.5 hours just standing there listening to the stories of how they watched their parents being dragged away through cultural tribal wars. And this gal knew her parents were tied up in their house, in their village house, and it was set on fire and burned. This young man watched his parents being dragged away and never to see them again. He spent 10 years in a refugee camp. And one of the best therapies, I think, for him was he became an Awana leader. And you can just see on his face now the joy that he had. But for me, it was one of the hardest things to hear the stories and just be able to say, you just can't say, God bless you, thank you for that. I mean, it really, really impacts you. Moving on from Africa, just a little fun picture I found up in I think this is up in India, a little Kodak shop there. Did a story of Awana kids in a orphanage in Thailand, up in northern Thailand. But these were all HIV kids. Every one of these were HIV positive. And just being able to tell the story of how they had a club there, this orphanage, and we were able to use it to promote, the need for missions and sharing the work, in Asia. Another place we had an Awana club was in Bangladesh at a leper colony. And again, another opportunity to go into a place, into a leper colony, and spend a day there filming pictures. We had a club right there in their community. Just an overwhelming experience to meet and see some of these families and these kids. Incredible time. I like to do cultural portraits, and this is just a gal. She was an Awana leader. This is her grandparents. This is up in the Punjab of India. Again, we do lots of training. We did training for these adults being trained on how to play the game, how to do the program, and and then they all go out and practice it and teach it themselves. So, a refugee camp in the northeast of India, near Myanmar. Their refugee camps. Just he's 5 years old to prostitutes. He's in a brothel when this orphanage found him. The reason I show this picture is because who would have guessed that a year later, another Christian journalist would have been in the same country and in the same city and in the same orphanage taking pictures of the same kid. And that was Gary Chapman. I saw about a year later a story that he had done on this very same young boy. Again, they showed us he had on his shoulders, he had cigarette burns where he was abused as a child, not even 5 years old. One club way up in the mountains of Nepal, and I was there after the earthquake as well, and told some of the stories there. Again, just incredible time to see how people are receiving the gospel and sharing there. Fun time. And then we were able to use this to talk about advocacy in clubs for Awana and tell about how clubs in the U.S. can be aware of that. I want to switch real quickly to and just finish up here with I had the opportunity to go 3 times into Cuba. I just wanted to show these pictures of this old camera, about 100 years old, how they take pictures. This is their shutter. The cap is their shutter, and they take pictures on the paper and then reverse it, shoot it again and reverse it, and then make a print. So you can do that for $1. But we had over 50 clubs in Awana, and I tell this story simply because it was incredible culture to visit. But I told you that first story about access that we have, the easy to access in the early days of being an American. But when I was in Cuba, by the way, we had Awana material printed there. But when I was in Cuba, we had clubs just meeting in this is a shipping container. They just meet in, one of them in a shipping container or in a backyard of an area. But we had over 50 clubs there. This was in 2006. And I share this picture almost beyond. The going is good. Well, it wasn't always going good because my third time there, I was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time and got arrested in Cuba and ended up spending a week in a Cuban jail, completely off the radar. Nobody knew where I was. And I found out later that could have turned into about 7 to 20 years. But the State Department finally got me out and negotiated. And I share that story because I tell young people today, just make sure you know God's calling when you're going out on the field, because you really have to be ready to know that you're in God's will, because you may end up places. What I'm doing now is I work for prison ministry, Lifeline Global. It was a part of Awana. I was laid off from Awana about 2 years ago. And but we have events in prisons around the U.S. and in 19 countries overseas. But we have a program called Malachi Dads, for which we teach dads how to become better fathers from behind bars. And we have an event every year called Returning Hearts Celebration, where we have 500-600 kids come and spend the day with their dads. And it's a day that they can take steps towards reconciliation and seek forgiveness. So this is what I'm currently doing now. I have an opportunity to go into women's prisons. There's 6 of these women like this who they look really tough, and they are. Many of them are serving life sentences, but they also wrote the 6 chapters of the Psalm 23 study for women in our Hannah's Gift program. I share this picture because this is just kind of it's become our poster child picture for Returning Hearts Celebration and Lifeline. But this was taken by a California Baptist University student, and we have students that come help us every year. And that process, that whole event of students coming out, started from a conversation at the Southwest Photojournalism Conference. And so that's how through Jem Veneman we had students. We've been doing that for over 10 years, having kids come in. Just another fun picture came out of a Southwest Photojournalism Conference when Joe McNally was there. He inspired me to learn from him, and he had a similar picture like this. This was an Awana leader at Edwards Air Force Base. He's an instructor at Edwards Air Force Base at the Test Pilot School, but he's also a Cubbies Awana leader, so that was kind of cool. Phil Wallace has been my co-worker for years until I was laid off about 2.5 years ago, and so he's just been a good friend and a great guy to travel with. You may notice the other guy is Josh McDowell. So I had the opportunity to tell that story. So we saw that picture, I'm sorry. Right now, I'm just have some personal projects. I'm just filming the Texas Legends of Texas around here. And that's just kind of a fun thing I've been doing in sort of my semi-retirement, waiting to see what God has for me next. I'm still open to what he would do. And so it's been quite a ride. It's been 40 years of doing this sort of thing. So that's it. I'm sorry it was a couple minutes longer than you said, but that's the fast version. Let me unshare this here.
Anybody got questions for John?
Thank you, John, for showing us your work. I appreciate the diversity of experiences that you've been used in to communicate the grace of God.
Thank you. It's been quite a ride, like I said.
You know, somebody was going to ask about that Cuban jailing. Any more details? How did you get out and everything?
The State Department finally, when I didn't show up on my flight, Awana started looking into it, and when they found out that I had not been on my flight, they contacted the State Department, and then the State Department began looking around, and they kind of figured out where people usually end up in Cuba. You know, I have a little 8 or 9 page PDF story. If people want to hear the more details, I'll be glad to send it to you. But it was really an experience of what a very impacting experience for my life, because when you get in a situation where you have absolutely no control, it really tests your faith, and you have to really make a commitment to what God is doing. And it was a life impacting experience of seeing God work in giving me peace and calm during that time of uncertainty. And I'll tell you what happens there is when you get in a situation like that, paranoia begins to set in. Everything you say is told to you. You don't know if it's true or not. And it was really a difficult situation from that regard, because you start thinking, who's telling you the truth? No one's, you don't know if anyone's telling you the truth, But again, after the sixth day, the State Department finally showed up, and I'm not sure what they said to get me out, but they negotiated my release, and I was home that evening.
Hey, John, this is Greg. You created strain in my marriage. I just wanted you to know that with your Cuba story. My wife was an Awana leader in Japan, loves Awana, thinks about Awana, has cubbies and sparks and all this stuff. Well, when I was getting ready to go to Cuba, somehow, and it was probably Stanley, let her know about, the Awana guy got put in jail in Cuba. So she was convinced that she would never see me again when I went down there. So I would prefer her not knowing that story before I went down. I went down 2012. So I'm glad you got it worked out okay.
So am I. And my wife. Yeah. Very good. Thanks for the opportunity, Stan. And again, we're not sure what we've got. I'm kind of semi-retired. I still would like to do some overseas trips, but people, when they have lots of experience, they know that you're getting old too. And so that's been a challenge.
Where do you live now, John?
I live in Arlington, Texas.
Okay,
Because I was the international guy with a lot of, I could basically work from anywhere. So my wife got a job with the Seed Company, which is an affiliate of Wycliffe. We moved down here, and that was really a good thing, a God thing, because 2 years later I was laid off from Awana, and had we stayed up in the Chicagoland area, I would have been, without without a job for both of us. But we had to move, and she worked in. So that was good. And I haven't shoveled snow in 5 years. So.
I think for me, John, it's amazing because I saw your photos way before I ever met you, seeing them in some of the archives and some of the photo databases. And, it's funny, you pick up, there's people who know what they're doing with a camera. And then to run into you at the Southwest Photojournalism Conference for the first time, and then seeing your work is really great. I really appreciate it. It's top-notch stuff and creative and good camera work, and just it's great to see that kind of content being created for use that promotes the work of God. So
he saw my work because we had a lot of Wycliffe people in the Philippines who were Canadian. So
yeah,
that's why.
Thanks, John, for sharing. It's, the work is stunning. It's encouraging to all of us. I think getting old just simply means you have more opportunity to influence those who are younger, who are knocking stuff out, but they're not necessarily putting in perspective. How is this impacting lives? How is this changing lives? How can I be used for the kingdom in the types of things? And even what you shared today really put it in perspective for us. I appreciate your heart and the way that you shared that. So thanks for doing that.
It was really challenging when Stan said, 10 minutes to put all those years into, and we're not trying to tell the whole story, but just things that were highlights. You start going through and you think, wow, you just, the last 10 minutes before I was deleting stuff, no, I don't need this, I don't need this. Those edits.
Well, thanks for sharing with us. It was really good. Alan, Kinzly, can you kind of take over the screen and share some of your work?
Sure. I don't know how I can follow that, so don't set your bar that high for my presentation. After that, that was incredible and awesome, and man, some of those pictures you don't even have words to describe it. But that's the beauty of what we do, is we don't have to talk that much. So just quick background on me. I'm an Atlanta kid, a Georgia boy, lived here my whole life. Ended up going to the University of Georgia, but didn't really want to do any video or photography or anything like that. I wanted to be a physical therapist. And as they say, like you mentioned, God has other ways. And so chemistry and I did not get along very well at Georgia. And so I had to change my career path. One of my claim to fame, I guess, is while I was at the University of Georgia, I will share my screen now. Let's see. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So while I was at the University of Georgia, I was actually the mascot for 3 years. So I'm going to just play this just kind of as the background, just some different shots. So 2005, 2006, I was a hairy dog, traveling with the football team and all that kind of stuff. And this is kind of when I kind of got into videography. I had a choice this semester that I actually traveled. I was either going to take 2 classes or I could do an internship at Fox 5 here in Atlanta. And I decided, even though I had rehearsals and practice and all that kind of stuff for Harry Dog, I was also going to do an internship at Fox 5. So it was a crazy, crazy semester. But all this video is of me shot by the guy that was also Harry Dog. So we kind of traded filming each other. And that's really kind of where I started to really enjoy filming things. And so I used this little camcorder and I started filming, I filmed 2 of my cousins' weddings. And then I worked at a summer camp. And so I did a little retirement video for somebody that was retiring from the camp, Camp Twin Lakes, if anybody's ever heard of it. It's a camp for kids with special needs outside of Atlanta. So the original CEO was retiring, so I put together a video. And that's kind of really what really piqued my interest. Just kind of all that stuff was kind of thrown at me. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is really neat. And I can actually, somewhat make a living out of this. I'll take it. So I did the internship at Fox 5 and I graduated from college and I got a job down in Savannah, Georgia. And I was the weekend sports anchor for the ABC and Fox affiliate down in Savannah. And so from that point, so that's kind of like my background on what I do with my video. Here's a little clip of me in Savannah. This is when I actually had hair on the top of my head and was not growing it on my face during my coronavirus. So I did that for 5 years and moved back to Atlanta and started working for the ABC affiliate and the Weather Channel, so WSB TV and the Weather Channel as a freelancer. All this video from this newscast is my own shooting. That was one of the big things that we did down in Savannah. Is we shot our own videos, we edited our own videos, we wrote our own scripts, and we produced our own stuff. That's the beauty of being in a small market TV station. So it was me and my sports director, and it was basically all of us. The 2 of us, we did everything. So that's really kind of my background on like my philosophy that I do for videos. I love the editing and the story creative development and, trying to show different angles and that kind of things. I'm not a big equipment guy or, it's like I tell people I was at a TV station and I didn't have a choice of what format I could use. I was told by the engineers, you have to do it this way because that's the only way it's going to get on the air. You have to do it this way. So I'm not really, somebody that kind of walks around and shows or talks, numbers and, equipment and that kind of stuff. I'm kind of a bare minimum guy. But then my shooting philosophy is more like a news kind of story angle. I'm not too much into the kind of the over dramatization. I don't have time in my current job or in TV to really kind of do a really in-depth documentary stuff. So I kind of go at the angle of more kind of news telling and storytelling in that regard. And so these are just a couple of the videos that I did as well. So this is just one that I did. Being a UGA mascot and alum, this video is actually really tough for me because this is a story about a Georgia Tech football player, who was discerning the call to the priesthood. And so I had to go and spend time at the Georgia Tech football practice facility and interview the head football coach at Georgia Tech, all for this video. The background is he actually had a head injury in high school where he was playing linebacker, but he had to shift his position to kicker and punter. And then so he tried to walk on at Georgia Tech, got a job on Georgia Tech, got a position on Georgia Tech, and it was actually going into his senior year where he actually had a position to be the starter, and that was when God called him to the priesthood. And so he actually discerned out of playing football at Georgia Tech and went into the seminary. And right now he's actually, he did 2 years in the seminary, and right now he's actually taken a year off for more discernment. So that's kind of his background. But again, I'm the videographer of the Archdiocese of Atlanta, Catholic Archdiocese. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically all the Catholic churches are kind of put in like an umbrella. So if you draw a line through the middle of the state of Georgia, everything from Augusta, Macon, Columbus, all the Catholic churches north of that kind of fall into the umbrella of the Archdiocese of Atlanta. And so my job at the Archdiocese office is kind of more education and kind of teaching and, kind of more like news stuff of like what's happening in the Catholic churches. So this guy was really involved at the Georgia Tech Catholic Center, and that's where he kind of got into really his prayer life and that kind of stuff that kind of led him to a potential calling to the priesthood. So I do some cool things like that. This is one of my fun ones that I do. I should actually see if I can share the audio for here. Let's see. System. Can y'all hear that? Is that?
Not really. You go to your, down by your microphone, you have other choices to check to pick. You'll see the same as system.
Yeah.
It's probably the best choice.
Okay, there we go. Same as system. Let's. Oops, sorry.
Still not getting the audio.
Oh no. All right. Well, let's see.
Be sure you pick the speaker, select speaker,
Yeah, same as system.
or pick another one, built-in output, internal speakers.
Built-in output. I got headphones and line out for my speakers here.
Alan, if you're on Bluetooth, you might want to turn the Bluetooth off just to your computer speakers.
Not on Bluetooth either, so I don't know. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. Basically, what this video is kind of a fun get to know the Archbishop. This is our Archbishop, who's actually not here anymore. He just got moved to Washington, D.C. about a year ago. But this was a fun thing. When I talked to him, I asked, what do you enjoy most about being Archbishop? And he goes, when I go to the schools and I go to youth groups and stuff like that, I love it when the kids ask me questions. I just think that's very innocent, and it's fun to get to know the kids and then to get to know me. And so I thought it was like a cool thing to do. So I went around to our different Catholic schools and then eventually some of our church's youth groups and actually got kids to ask him a specific question. And so I recorded the kids asking the question, and then I put up a whole bunch together. I set aside 45 minutes with the Archbishop, and I basically played these videos on the laptop back to him. Like this, you can see his reaction down in the bottom corner. He's actually laughing because he never even saw the questions beforehand. So I'm literally playing the kids asking the questions, what he enjoys. And this one was, what was your favorite kids book or kids movie? And so he talks about Wizard of Oz, how he just loved the Wizard of Oz when he was growing up. And so it was a fun way to kind of to showcase, that our bishop, is human and has human interests and enjoys watching baseball and football and sports and movies and things like that. And it just kind of, and it made it a more fun way too, having the kids ask the question a little bit more of an innocent way. And so this kid actually asked him how old he is. So it was kind of funny. So I made some different sound effects and things like that. So just to kind of make it more fun. So it was an ongoing series. I did it once a month for about a year and a half, and it got really good responses. And I even had some churches and schools that I had not got the kids to ask the question. They were begging me to come, hey, get our kids. We want to be on. We want to be on. And then I ended up, there was just, I forget what happened, but there was just a bunch of stuff that happened, and we just kind of stopped doing it about 6 months before he got transferred. So we just got a new Archbishop. So I'm hoping to maybe redo this. So that was just a kind of a fun thing. And then just different kind of videos. This is a still picture. I didn't take it, Michael Alexander did, but this is a video about, it's called Fish Fries Saves Lives. And this is a story about a deacon of one of our churches and his wife were actually at a Friday night fish fry during Lent, because, you know, Catholics, we like the fish fry thing. And while he was at church doing the cross during the fish fry, a single engine plane actually crashed into his house and blew up the house, caught it on fire. This is actually footage of a neighbor that took it from the house. And he talks about how the way that the plane hit and the way that the house exploded, like there would have been no way that him and his wife would have survived. And the reason that they did was because he was at church on Friday night fish fry. Unfortunately, the pilot did pass away, but he was the only casualty. And so there could have been a lot more devastation and that kind of thing. So I actually did this video. They built a new house, not in the same place, but they built a new house, and they had the Archbishop come and bless their new house. And obviously it's an incredible story of just how God really kind of intervenes on things. So that's a picture of, I used some of Michael Alexander's still pictures for this, because obviously I didn't have a camera for the fire, but that's kind of his house. So those are the kind of things that I love to do. I've really enjoyed doing this. Coming into this job, you know, I was in TV for almost 10 years, and you never would have thought the Catholic Archdiocese would have a videographer position. My sister is actually a high school math teacher, and she was looking to get into a Catholic school to teach. And so she kept looking for the job descriptions on the website, and this job popped up, and she was like, "Hey, this may be of interest to you." And I was like, "Yeah, like, you know, I'm a contractor right now. I'd like to have some of these things called days off and a permanent salary kind of thing." And so I applied for the position. I interviewed in the morning, and that afternoon they offered me the job. And it's a brand new position, so I was able to create, kind of build it from where I started. And it'll be 6 years this July that I've been here. So it's been awesome. It's been fun. A lot of people ask me, have you ever been to Rome and met the Pope? Well, I've been to Rome once, and I don't know if I've necessarily met the Pope, but I've been in the same room as the Pope. So I went over there. Actually, my best friends were actually getting married in Spain. And so I decided, hey, let's go to Rome for a couple of days. And so I actually worked out with one of our priests. He was going to come. I was going to go to Rome with him for a few days because he had to be there for business, and he had never been to Spain before. So he would come to Spain with me afterwards for a few days, and then he would leave before we went to the wedding. And so this is actually the view. We have a seminary in Rome it's called the North American College. So all the dioceses in America can send one or two seminarians, and this is actually the view of St. Peter's from the NAC, as they call it. And so this is actually one of the tallest buildings in Rome. So this is the view of that. And it's such a good view, actually, when I was there. Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty was actually filming a piece on worldwide religions. And I was actually went up to that thing to set up a sunset GoPro time lapse. And lo and behold, him and his film crew were up there filming as well. So I just kind of introduced myself and said hello. But this was the closest I thought I was going to get to the Pope was his Sunday afternoon audience. So I got a media badge to attend his Sunday audience, which he sits up in a little window and talks. And when I went in to go get my media credential, there's actually something, they were having a big meeting called the Synod on Family. And so bishops and priests and cardinals, they all and lay people get together and kind of talk about how the Catholic Church can help. And they're like, well, Friday afternoon is kind of a slow day for media, so would you be interested? And I'm like, shoot, yeah, I'd be interested. I get to, go check out the Pope and that kind of stuff. So I go into this kind of a lecture hall for college, and all these red hats, as we call them, the red hats and the pink hats were all there. And all of a sudden, this guy in white walks in, and everybody kind of shuts up and starts whispering and forming a line in front of him to say hello. So this is my viewpoint of the Pope. So I had to stay up in the top, so I wasn't able to actually go meet him, but I was in the same room with him, and so I'll call that a win. So that's a lot more than I can do. So that's kind of my job in a nutshell, and don't have as incredible pictures as some of the other ones, but that's kind of what I do. And feel free to check out some of my videos. We're on vimeo.com/arch ATL for Archdiocese of Atlanta. So Arch ATL. So, and I can send you individual links or whatever too. So I think that should cover it. So if anybody has any questions right now, currently, I'll jump in that real quick. Right, this is actually our chapel here in the office building. We're in an office in technically Smyrna, Georgia. Just it's about a mile north of the new Brave Stadium, so it's right on the border between Marietta and Smyrna. We have a chapel inside our office building. So this is our chapel view. And obviously during this whole pandemic, everybody has to work from home, and we had to close our churches for public masses. And we didn't have the live stream set up in this chapel. And so I kind of got thrown to the fire. Luckily, we had a very generous person when he passed away. He was really big into videos and producing things. I don't even know exactly what he did, but he left some equipment. And I didn't really have any immediate need for it. So it kind of sat, and that was right before I got the job. And so it kind of sat in a storage closet until now. And so that's where I get all this equipment. The camera in the front is my normal camera. The stuff in the back is all this donated equipment. So I kind of had to make a makeshift live stream setup for daily mass. We'd have a daily mass at noon every day. And so I've been working basically every single day since March 1st, when all this coronavirus stuff hit, live streaming a mass from the chapel. So that's been a kind of a fun and unique thing, because I hadn't really had to do that as part of my job description. So I was able to, I've been able to do that and kind of learn a little bit more about live streaming and kind of go back to my TV news roots and sitting in a control room and punching buttons and that kind of stuff. So it's been kind of stressful at the beginning, but now that I've kind of gotten it down, it's been kind of fun and exciting. And obviously I'm pretty blessed and humbled to be able to go to mass every day when a lot of people can't go to mass. And so I get different Facebook messages or text messages or emails just thanking me for live streaming the mass so that people can attend virtually if they can't do it in person. So that's been kind of a blessing for me in this whole crazy world that we live in.
Any questions for Alan?
Hey, Alan, it's Michael here.
Hey, go dogs. Yeah.
So as you can tell, I'm a dog fan. My question is, what years were you the hairy dog?
So I was the mascot for 3 years, 2003 to 2006. And there's two mascots. One's Hairy Dog, like you saw, the more traditional plush mascot. And I was Hairy Dog for 2005, 2006. So the DJ Shockley SEC championship year, I was able to travel with the team and go to the SEC championship and stuff like that. The other 2 years, I was another mascot. His name is Spike, and he's a giant 8.5 foot tall inflatable mascot, and he does basically all the sports except for football. So you don't see him during football games, but if you go to any of the other sports, you'll see Spike walking around. So I did that for 2 years and Hairy Dog for 1 year.
The reason I ask is I'm here in Pasadena, California, home of the Rose Bowl.
Oh yeah, I was there a couple years ago.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask. So we were both at that game, I guess.
Yep. So
never forget it, man.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hope to be back soon. So yep.
You spoke of WSB. Did any of the Atlanta people know a newscaster the name Terry Casey? Do anyone know that name? Terry Casey, he was a newscaster probably much earlier than you were there. But
I vaguely recognize that name, but not
okay.
Definitely not when I was there. No.
Okay.
I started working there. I moved from Savannah in early 2012, and so I started working at WSB in the Weather Channel like spring 2012.
Hey, Alan, I have a question. So basically, you morphed from, being in the anchor desk for a news station where you were verbally communicating a lot. And of course, you're kind of a one-man band. You were
Yeah.
shooting and verbally communicating. And then all of a sudden you went to where you're behind the camera. So what has that transition been like for you, and how did one prepare you for the other?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique. I mean, I loved being on camera. It's a lot of fun, unique, but the one-man band stuff is so cool too. Like I can't tell you how cool it is to, like, when you tell people like, oh yeah, well, I filmed that and edited that and wrote that, and they're like, wow, you can do all that. So the fact that I was that one-man band kind of made it a little bit easier of a transition. You know, it's still kind of tough because, you know, you're writing something for somebody else to present. And when I was a producer, actually, for the Georgia Bulldogs TV show at Channel 2, they have a contract with UGA. It's a weekly half an hour show Saturday morning, and then an hour show during football. And so I was the producer and editor and photographer for that. And the anchors, like, just, they loved it when I wrote their stories, because they were like, we know that that's how you approach it, is because you've been here before, you know how to write for that and that kind of stuff. And I think that bodes well for the packages that I do here, as well, as I kind of have that kind of a writing capability because I have that background. So it's definitely helped a lot, the fact that I was on the anchor desk and kind of had that experience. But I do kind of miss it sometimes, like everything that you enjoy. If you can't do it, you do kind of miss it. And I still get my TV news fixed a little bit. I still freelance for Friday night football here in Georgia. So high school football Friday night. So I go out there and shoot and edit and write. And and again, my one-man band kind of comes back to help me there, because the executive sports producer that I'm really good friends with, he basically just tells me, hey, you're going to this game, we'll see you later. And he doesn't even think about, like, if my highlights are going to make the newscast or not. He's like, I know I'm going to get good video from you. I know you're going to have good highlights, and we know your script's going to be done. So, so that kind of stuff. But it's, yeah, it was unique, but it's definitely helped a lot. So.
Thank you.
Anything else? Kind of a unique, my story's a little unique compared to all you guys.
So what's your dream kind of assignment is? Do you get to travel with, say, church groups that go over and do overseas volunteer groups?
I would love to do that kind of stuff. I did a mission trip in college. It's called Amigos for Christ, and it was down in Nicaragua. When it was kind of after one of the hurricanes created a mudslide, and they basically had to reposition some little towns. And I went down there kind of near the early stages. It was within like the first 3 years they started going down there. So I really kind of saw, like, we literally moved families out of a landfill dump into a new community. And when I was there, they had just started building permanent buildings in one of the, I think, 3 communities that they were moving people. So we basically moved the 3rd community out of the dump into a new community. And a couple of years ago, I ran into somebody else, because it was started at a Catholic church here in Atlanta, but it's become, so much more than just the Catholic youth group going. And I ran into somebody that had been recently, and they were telling me about all the work that they had done down in Nicaragua. And I'm like, holy cow, like, I'm getting goosebumps right now, like thinking about seeing her pictures compared to my pictures. And I would love to go and film that kind of stuff and do that. I love that story. I love the progression. I would love to just show, what people are doing in the world missionary wise. Unfortunately for my particular position, I would have to kind of make sure nothing was happening that week or whatever. But my boss, we got a new communications director at the end of October last year, and she actually seems like she would be kind of on board for that kind of stuff in the future. So I think once the world kind of settles down and all that, and I kind of find a group or an organization to go with, I think I'd love to do that. So most of my travel just happens in the archdiocese, so the northern part of Georgia. I drive a lot, but I would love to kind of branch out a little bit more and do some more, Atlanta focused stories, because that's obviously part of what I kind of need to find, like a youth group from Atlanta that goes, or, a school from Atlanta to go, or something like that. So I kind of have to keep that Atlanta angle, but other than that, I would love to do it. So if anybody has any any leads or things like that, let me know.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What's been your biggest challenge, especially in getting production done during this past few months?
Uh, I've been one of the lucky ones. I've actually been slammed with work. So my biggest challenge is finding the time to do it all. Luckily, like I said, we started live streaming every single day, and so I've been live streaming every single day. And just because I work in the same building as the bishops, and it's a weird thing in the Catholic Church. Like our archbishop got moved to Washington D.C. Last April, and so we had like an interim while the Pope and some other people were deciding who was going to be our new archbishop. And right at the beginning of this pandemic, our new archbishop got announced. And so he came from Savannah, actually. But a lot of people wanted to hear, what was going on. And so now Bishop Joel, one of our assistant bishops, he was kind of the administrator. And so everybody was asking him these things. And we really just sat at him and our other assistant bishop down like 2 different times. And we just started asking him questions about like, what good can come from something like this? Like, how is this going to affect the prayer life? What is spiritual communion when so many people are used to, actual physical communion? And so I was actually producing videos left and right. So I've probably produced, 2 videos a week, just short little, social media hitters, like 30 seconds to 2 minutes max. So I've produced a lot of those like little short hitters, along with live streaming every single day. And then the new archbishop, he got installed. His date when they announced it, obviously not expecting everything was going to close down and churches were going to be closed as well, was May 6th. And so we had to kind of find out another plan. He still wanted to do it on May 6th because he wanted to start working in Atlanta. So we basically had to figure, we hired a production company to the cathedral because they don't have a great live stream setup, but we wanted it to be top notch. So we hired a company and came in and we live streamed a Vespers evening prayer service called Vespers the night before, and then his actual installation mass. And so we did that. And so that gave us a whole more kind of new set of videos. So as soon as he got here, same thing. We sat him down for about an hour and we had him do a couple, like Easter messages and a Happy Mother's Day message. But then we asked him, what is your background? He's a Franciscan. So it's like, one of the things that we just pushed out a couple of days ago was what is his Franciscan influence in being a bishop? And he was great. And so I got about 10 videos out of him. And so I've actually, luckily I had a lot of kind of built-in stories, the fact that we're getting a new archbishop and now he's here and churches opening and closing and that kind of stuff. My highest viewed video in the 6 years I've been here was actually the video that we put together that explained our reopening process. That we reopened our churches for public masses last weekend. And that's been my highest viewed video that I've had in 6 years, which is kind of incredible. And my second highest video, we actually got priests to film themselves saying, "We miss you guys. We love you guys. We're praying for y'all. Hope you're praying for us. We can't wait to see you." And we got about 20 responses, and I put that all together in a video and pushed that out. And that's now my second highest view video. So it's been, so luckily, luckily I've been blessed. Again, I've actually been pretty busy these days, but I guess, and I feel blessed because I know a lot of people can't say that. So, I'm not complaining by any means.
I really appreciate you sharing, and Alan, your background from my perspective, just knowing that you came from a news outlet and we're so used to short time. Mm-hmm. The largest problem that a good number of other journalists who come from print media is they have no concept of time quite the same. And I don't mean that for anybody in this group necessarily, but I'm just saying I've noticed when I worked at different organizations and corporate area, people just want to talk. You turn the microphone, they go on forever. And it seems like to do the kind of short things that you're talking about, that's, it seems like you have a unique background that a lot of people are missing to know how to keep it short.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that was one of the hardest things, because I think deep down, all of us are, we're storytellers. So like when we interview somebody and they have such a good story, it's hard to trim it and edit and take out, like some really interesting parts. But, when, like you said, like as a TV guy, like you had 2 minutes and that's it, so that's still the hardest part for me. Because I don't have hard deadlines right now. Some of my videos do go a little bit longer than usual, but yeah, but that's still in the back of my head, is the shorter the better. And I try to do that all the time. So yeah, it definitely has helped me. It still stinks to cut out some good parts, but but that really kind of makes you think, because again, you want people to watch, you want people to be entertained, and you don't want them to be bored. So, you don't want stories to drag out too long. And again, I don't do too much, kind of post-production kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I do is the actual video that I shot, and it's just kind of straight edits kind of stuff. So, I don't have kind of the dramatic reenactments or, the unique lighting and that kind of stuff to kind of keep attention a little bit. So I do kind of try to lean towards shorter stories in general. But yeah, I actually never really thought about that, but I guess that makes sense. My TV background is kind of why I like to keep kind of things a little bit more shorter and sweeter.
Well, thank you everybody for showing up this week. I'm going to be down at a beach next week. I'm going to try to go ahead and do this again next week. I just need to get I'm going to send an email out and see who's available for next week to do this. And I'll just contact people that way and then send you an invite and hopefully get you to come back next week, and we can try this again and get to meet somebody else. The thing with the shorter 5 to 10 minutes, the 20-minute TED Talk is like that's a good in-depth type thing. This is more of just kind of like what you've been seeing here, a little snippet. You don't have to tell your whole life when we send this. If it's just, hey, I'm working on what you're working on right now, and even if it's a part of thing, I think people would be interested in finding out what you're doing, because it makes them think of ways they can maybe do something themselves and get their creative spark going again. Thank you all for showing up. Anybody want to make a comment before we disappear? I tried recording this, but because I ended up dropping out in the middle of this because my phone just all of a sudden cut out as well on the connection, and then I rejoined. So I won't have a complete video as last time, but I'll try to put up what I have.
Thanks for organizing this, Stanley.
You're welcome, Alan. Thank you guys for showing up too. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again maybe next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Stanley.
Have a good week.
Thanks. See you all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.